There is a strange thing that happens in the workplace. A problem appears. A process breaks down. A team misses expectations. People make mistakes. A new system is not being used correctly. Managers feel frustrated. Customers feel the inconsistency. Leaders want action. And almost immediately, someone says, "We need training." It is one of the most common solutions organizations reach for, and it makes sense. Training feels responsible. Training feels organized. Training feels like progress. It gives the problem a name, a timeline, a deliverable, and eventually, a completion record. Someone can point to a course and say, "We addressed it." Someone can point to an attendance list and say, "They were trained." Someone can point to a certificate and say, "They completed it." But completion is not the same as change. Attendance is not the same as ability. Exposure is not the same as performance. And this is why one of the most important truths in instructional design is also one of the hardest to remember. Training is not always the answer. Now, that does not mean training is bad. It does not mean courses are useless. It does not mean instructional design is unnecessary. In fact, it means the opposite. Good instructional design matters because people deserve learning experiences that are connected to the real problem. Training can be powerful. Training can build confidence. Training can create shared language. Training can help people practice before the stakes are high. Training can make invisible work visible. Training can help someone understand not just what to do, but why it matters. But training only works when the problem can actually be helped by training. That is the key. Training is not magic. It cannot fix everything. It cannot repair a broken process. It cannot clarify expectations that leaders themselves have not clarified. It cannot make a confusing system intuitive. It cannot compensate for a workplace that rewards the opposite of what the training teaches. It cannot create time where no time exists. It cannot make people care about something they are punished for slowing down to do. Training is one tool, a very useful tool, but still only one tool. And when every problem becomes a training problem, training starts to lose credibility. People get sent to courses they do not need. Managers assume the issue has been solved. Learners feel blamed for problems they did not create. And the organization keeps wondering why nothing has changed. This is one of the traps. A training solution can look polished and still miss the point. The slides can be beautiful. The narration can be smooth. The interactions can be engaging. The quiz can be well written. The learning management system can track everything perfectly. And still, the actual performance problem can remain untouched because the person was never that people needed more information. Maybe they needed clearer priorities. Maybe they needed a better tool. Maybe they needed feedback. Maybe they needed practice. Maybe they needed coaching. Maybe they needed permission. Maybe they needed leadership alignment. Maybe they needed a process that matched the reality of the job. This is why the first job of an instructional designer is not to build, it is to understand. Before the course, before the outline, before the module, before the video, before the job aid, before the learning objectives, there is a moment where you have to pause and ask, what kind of problem is this? Because if you misdiagnose the problem, the solution can be impressive and still ineffective. A simple way to think about this is to separate performance problems into a few categories. Sometimes people do not know what to do. That is a knowledge problem. Sometimes people know what to do, but they cannot do it well yet. That is a skill problem. Sometimes people can do it, but the environment gets in the way. That is a support problem. Sometimes people can do it, but they do not see why it matters. That is a motivation problem. Sometimes people can do it, but no one reinforces it. That is a feedback problem. Sometimes people can do it, but the system makes the desired behavior harder than the current behavior. That is a design problem. And sometimes people are asked to perform in a workplace where the expectations, tools, incentives, and culture are all quietly contradicting each other. That is not a training problem. That is an organizational problem. Training may still be part of the answer, but it cannot carry the whole weight. Imagine a team is not using a new customer relation management system correctly. Leadership says, we need CRM training. Maybe they are right, but maybe not. So you investigate. Are people making mistakes because they do not know how to use the system? That could be a training issue. Are they skipping fields because they do not understand why the data matters? That could be a meaning issue. Are they avoiding the system because it takes twice as long as their old spreadsheet? That could be a workflow issue. Are managers still asking for reports from the spreadsheet instead of the CRM? That is a reinforcement issue. Are top performers allowed to ignore the process because their numbers are good? That is a culture issue. Are the required features poorly designed? That is a system issue. Are people afraid that entering accurate information will expose their pipeline problems? That is a trust issue. In all of those situations, CRM training might be part of the response, but it is not automatically the answer. The answer depends on the cause. That is the shift. Training asks, what do people need to learn? Performance consulting asks, what is preventing the desired performance? Both questions matter, but the second question keeps you honest. This is where instructional design becomes more strategic, because you are no longer just receiving a request. You are helping define the problem, and that can feel uncomfortable at first, especially if you are new, especially if a stakeholder says, just build the training, especially if the organization is used to treating learning teams like order takers. But a good designer has to be willing to ask useful questions, not defensive questions, not academic questions, not questions that make people feel foolish. Useful questions. Questions like, what does good performance look like? Who is doing this well already? What are they doing differently? What mistakes are happening most often? When do those mistakes happen? What tools are people using? What gets in their way? What happens after training? Do managers reinforce the behavior? How will we know if this worked? Those questions do not slow the work down. They protect the work. They help you avoid building something that looks complete but does not create change. They help you design for the real world. And the real world is where training succeeds or fails. One reason training gets overused is because it is visible. A course is visible. A workshop is visible. A certificate is visible. A calendar invite is visible. A completion report is visible. But many of the things that actually improve performance are less visible. A better checklist. A manager who gives better feedback. A workflow that removes unnecessary steps. A clear example of what good work looks like. A practice environment where people can make mistakes safely. That is why training is not always the answer, is not an anti-training statement. It is a pro-impact statement. It means we care enough about learning to place it where it belongs. It means we do not want training to become a ritual performed after every organizational problem. It means we do not want learners to be blamed when the system failed them. It means we do not want learning teams to spend their energy decorating the wrong solution. It means we want to work to matter. A training program should not exist just because someone requested it. It should exist because it helps people move from a current performance to a desired performance. And sometimes, the best instructional design decision is to recommend something smaller. A checklist, a coaching guide, a scenario practice session, a manager conversation, a workflow change, a searchable resource, a quick reference, a performance support tool, a better onboarding sequence, a clearer expectation, a better question. This is where the work becomes both humbling and creative, because once you stop assuming the answer is training, the solution space
Let's take a simple example.
A manager says, "My team keeps forgetting the steps for closing out a project. We need refresher training." A training first response might be, "Okay, let's build a short course." And maybe that is useful. But a performance first response asks, when do they forget? Which steps? How often does this happen? Are the steps visible during the work? Is there a checklist? Does the program manager tool guide them? Does anyone review the closeout tool before it is complete? Are the consequences clear? Do people close projects often enough to remember the process? Now you might discover that people only close out projects once every few months. In that case, refresher training may not be the best answer, because they do not need to memorize a process they rarely use. They need support at the moment they use it. Maybe the right answer is the project closeout checklist embedded in the workflow. Maybe it is a template. Maybe it is a 5-minute walkthrough paired with a job aid. Maybe it is a manager review step. Maybe it is a short video linked directly inside the project management tool. That is still instructional design. It is just not course-first instructional design. It is performance-first instructional design. This distinction matters even more now because AI can create content quickly, very quickly. We can generate outlines, scripts, slides, quizzes, handouts, scenarios, and summaries faster than ever. That is powerful. But it also makes diagnosis more important, not less. Because if you ask AI to build training for the wrong problem, it can help build the wrong solution much faster. The bottleneck is no longer only production. The bottleneck is judgment, knowing what to build, knowing why to build it, knowing who it is for, knowing what behavior needs to change, knowing what support will make that change more likely. AI can accelerate the work, but it does not remove the need to understand the gap. In some ways, it raises the stakes, because when content becomes easier to produce, discernment becomes more valuable. The question is not, can we make more training? Of course we can. The better question is, should training be the answer here? And if yes, what kind of training? And if no, what would help more? This is the kind of thinking that separates an instructional designer from a content factory. A content factory asks, what do you want in the course? An instructional designer asks, what should someone be able to do after this? A performance consultant asks, what is preventing them from doing it now? Those three questions live near each other, but they are not the same. And if you want your work to matter, you have to be able to move between them. Sometimes you are building. Sometimes you are questioning. Sometimes you are simplifying. Sometimes you are translating expert knowledge. Sometimes you are designing practice. Sometimes you are designing support. Sometimes you are helping a stakeholder realize that the thing they requested will not solve the thing they care about. That can be delicate. You do not want to become the person who says no to everything. You do not want to turn every simple request into a philosophical investigation. But you do not want to quietly build ineffective training just because it was requested. So the art is in the way you ask. Not, are you sure training is the answer? That can sound dismissive. Instead, can we take a few minutes to understand what is happening now and what we want people to do differently? That is a better door. Or, I can help build the training, but I want to make sure we design it around the actual performance gap. That positions you as helpful, not obstructive. Or, before we decide the format, let's identify what is getting in the way. That keeps the focus on the result. The tone matters, because performance consulting is not just analysis, it is relationship work. You are helping people slow down long enough to solve the right problem. A useful phrase to remember is this: do not reject the training request. Reframe it. A request for training usually means someone cares about a problem. That is good. They notice something. They want improvement. They are asking for help. So you do not need to shoot down the request. You need to open it up. We may need training. Let's understand the gap first. That sentence can change the conversation, because now training is still on the table, but it is no longer the only option. Now you can explore. Maybe you build a short module. Maybe you create a scenario practice. Maybe you build a manager coaching guide. Maybe you create a workflow checklist. Maybe you design a blended solution. Maybe you recommend a process change before training. Maybe you discover that the training already exists, but no one knows where to find it. Maybe you discover the real issue is that people were never given time to practice. That is why reframing matters. The goal is not to avoid training. The goal is to choose wisely. So how do you know when training is the answer? Training is probably part of the answer when people need new knowledge, new skills, new mental models, or structured practice. If people truly do not know what to do, training can help. If people need to recognize patterns, training can help. If people need to practice decisions before real consequences happen, training can help. If people need a shared language or standard, training can help. If people need to build confidence through guided repetition, training can help. But even then, training should be designed for use, not just completion. It should include realistic examples. It should include practice. It should include feedback. It should connect to the job. It should make the desired performance clear. It should prepare people for the moments where they will actually need to apply it. It should be supported after the learning experience ends. Because if training is the answer, it still needs a place to land. A course without reinforcement is fragile. A workshop without practice fades. A concept without application stays abstract. A skill without feedback develops unevenly. Training works best when it is part of a system of support. This is the quiet truth underneath all of this. People are not machines waiting for information uploads. They are human beings trying to perform in complicated environments. They forget. They improvise. They copy peers. They respond to incentives. They avoid embarrassment. They take shortcuts under pressure. They use the tools available. They listen to what managers actually reward. They make meaning from the culture around them. So if we want learning to transfer into performance, we have to design with that humanity in mind. Not just the content, the conditions. Not just the lesson, the moment of use. Not just the learner, the environment around the learner. Training is not always the answer because people are not only shaped by what they know. They are shaped by what the system makes easy, visible, reinforced, and meaningful. That is why instructional design is more interesting than course design alone. It sits at the intersection of learning, behavior, tools, systems, motivation, and work. And when you see that, you stop asking only, what should we teach? You start asking, what would make the right action more likely? That is a powerful question, because it moves you from content to conditions, from instruction to impact, from training as an event to learning as part of performance. So the next time you hear the phrase, we need training, try not to hear it as an order. Hear it as a signal that there is a gap, a signal that someone wants something to change, a signal that performance is not where it needs to be. Then pause. Ask what people need to do. Ask what they are doing now. Ask what is getting in the way. Ask whether the barrier is knowledge, skill, support, motivation, feedback, system design, or something else. And then choose the intervention that fits. Maybe it will be training. Maybe it will be something smaller. Maybe it will be something broader. Maybe it will be a combination. But whatever you build it because it serves the gap. Not because training was the first word someone reached for. That is how instructional design becomes more than content production. That is how learning teams become more strategic. That is how organizations stop checking the box and start changing behavior. Training is not always the answer, but when it is the answer, it deserves to be designed well. And when it is not the answer, the people doing the work deserve something better than another course. They deserve support that actually helps. They deserve clarity. They deserve practice. They deserve tools that match the work. They deserve feedback. They deserve systems that make good performance possible. And that is the work. Not just building training, building the conditions where people can succeed. So here's the question to carry with you. Before you build training, ask, what is the real barrier? If the barrier is knowledge, teach. If the barrier is skill, practice. If the barrier is memory, support. If the barrier is motivation, connect meaning. If the barrier is feedback, involve managers. If the barrier is the system, improve the system. And if the barrier is unclear, do not build yet, look closer, because training is not always the answer, but understanding the problem always is. If you are learning instructional design, Building workplace training or trying to solve performance problems, this series is for you. In the next episode, we'll talk about learning objectives and why the best ones are really promises about performance.